Xerxes Lucifer and his father Xeoticus Gremory, both had faces that showed that something was troubling them. Standing next to Xerxes was a woman with silver hair in a maid's uniform with a blank expression, but, on the inside, she was just as concerned as the men sitting before her. Xerxes looks up to his father in concern. Are you sure that the doctors weren't wrong? Xeoticus looks at his son and shakes his head. No, the doctors ran multiple tests to make sure, and they were positive that they couldn't have missed something like this. The maid standing next to Xerxes says, for humans, this is a common thing to happen, so it's not completely outside the realm of possibility. Xeoticus and Xerxes both look at the maid, both contemplating her words, thinking of a way to respond. The one to respond first is Xeoticus. I understand what you are saying, Graphia, but we are not humans. Though in some ways we are similar, but, to my knowledge, this has never happened to a devil. Xerxes then looks to his father when an idea comes to his head. Do you think it has something to do with their deaths? Xeoticus slowly thinks about his son's words and says, the balance of light and dark may have been out of balance and a lot of unprecedented things have been happening. Xerxes was about to say something else but was cut off when a Graphia, Xerxes, Lord Xeoticus, I think the both of you are getting too worked up about this. Yes, it is surprising that something like this is happening, but not to sound ironic, this seems like a miracle from the big man himself. Xerxes' eyes widen. Wait, do you guys feel that? It feels like we're being watched. I mean, yes, you are the current Lucifer, and I am the current head of the Gremory family. It's not like we are some common devils, but Xerxes just shakes his head in disapproval. No, this feels different, it feels. But before Xerxes is cut off as a nurse comes blasting through two double doors. Lord Lucifer, Lord Gremory, I have good news and bad news. Someone's inner thought. Well, looks like everything seems to have worked out properly. I just hope the cycle of hatred has ended and the world can live in peace. What's this? It seems like the surrounding magic is different somehow. It feels like pure demonic power. Did my descendants turn the world into an underworld? I will be scolding my subordinates about this. I wanted peace, not for them to completely wipe out humans. Wait a second, now that I focus harder, I can't detect a single human, but I do sense some beings with strong demonic magical power, and two of them feel similar to my power but different in their own way. Where I'm at doesn't feel like Earth, more like a dimension, but the magical power I'm feeling feels different from mine but similar also. Something is off. These beings don't feel like my descendants, and one seems to have sensed my presence. Sorry, Mother, but I need to investigate your memories. A few minutes later. So it appears I am in another world with different demon kings, or I should say devil kings, and one is my older brother. This is wrong. I need to figure out what happened. I'm going to need to adjust my plans. I open my eyes, but it's completely dark, which makes sense for where I am at. As I move around, I feel something to my left. Oh, looks like I am not alone in here by your arm. Biology, I see you must be my sister. Ha 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 ha. I have never had a sister before, but this time I'll make sure I can protect my family. Looks like it's time. Sorry sis, I'm going to need to be born first since I am a king and all. Transition to Venelana Gremory. Doctor, please tell me, how are they? Please tell me that they will. But before she can get out her words, she starts screaming out in pain. She passes out and goes limp and faints. The doctor looks up from his notepad. Yes, Lady Gremory, but you must stay still. Your body can't handle this much pain. Oh, my God, ouch, Lady Gremory, quick everyone get in here. We are doing this now. We can't let the matriarch of the Gremory family die along with her children. Be ready with the medical equipment, and where are those phoenix tears? Miss Gremory, please stay with us. Then suddenly Miss Gremory wakes, staring at the ceiling in confusion. Where am I? The doctor snaps his head towards her. You are in the hospital. I just felt like my life just flashed before my... Then out of nowhere Venelana grabs the doctor by the neck and screams at him, get these children out of me. She then drops him and starts screaming. The doctor regains his composure and looks at the nurses who just walked into the room. Okay, we are doing this now, everyone. Okay, Miss Gremory, give me a big push. A few minutes later. He's a boy. Here, quick, take this one to the incubator now. No, at least let me look at him. There you go, Miss Gremory, just one more left. Give me some more good pushes. Back to the nurse. There you go, little one, in you go. Take care, see you in a minute. Nurse, hurry and come back, we need you. She turns to walk out of the room. Coming, thank you. Wait, who said that? As the nurse looks around, she doesn't see anyone around here except for other babies around her and dismisses it, chucking it up to her imagination. The baby boy lying in the infirmary may seem lifeless, but inside his mind, it could be further from the truth. Unknown baby inner thoughts. It seems my body at the moment can't contain my full power, but it seems like that must be the reason why are putting me in here. That stunt I pulled earlier could have killed my mother. I should have been more cautious. I assume I should act like a newborn and halt my accelerated aging. So, I don't draw attention to myself, and judging from the memories I have from my mother, a baby who grows up in a month could cause problems for the other families. Back to Xeoticus. Lord Gremory, Lord Lucifer, I have bad news. Well, speak the bad news first and can only go up from there. Flashback. Honey, we need to be ready for the 3 worst possible outcomes. Which is with you dying, one of the children dying, or all 3 of you dying? Venelana nods with tears coming down her face. Yes, that is correct. At the moment our baby boy appears to be dead, but according to the doctors his body appears to grow slowly, making them think he is still alive, and they don't know why, but they say we should be ready for the worst. For the girl, it seems everything is fine, but there is a possibility something could go wrong. Finally, this has never happened in Devil Society, so we don't know how your body will react when you are in labor. Flashback end. Yes, Lord Gremory, now your wife is in a coma. She has had a severe strain on her body, but we have given her phoenix tears, so besides that she is fine. Xeoticus' eyes flickered from excitement. So, the good news. As soon as Xeoticus asked the question he realized it could be only one thing. Yes, sir, the good news is both of your children are doing fine and your son is in an incubator and is alive and well. While the nurse was talking, Xerxes, Graphia, and Xeoticus both felt as though a massive weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Suddenly Xeoticus started crying tears of joy, asking, "Can you take me to them?" The nurse nods. "Yes, sir, who one do you want to see?" But before she could finish, Xeoticus blurts out, "Whichever one is closest." The nurse nods again and all 3 devils begin to follow her to a room that has a baby girl crying in the room. Xeoticus' eyes flicker from joy as his heart skips a beat upon seeing his daughter's face for the first time. Xeoticus then look at Xerxes and can see they both had the same expression. Xeoticus then look at Graphia, who had a small grin on her face as well. Xeoticus then thinks to himself, she is perfect, worthy of the name Gremory. Father Xeoticus turns his attention to his son after hearing his name called. "Yes, what can I do for you? Have you decided on a name for her yet?" "Yes, your mother and I talked about it before." Xeoticus then looks down at his daughter, then looks back up to his son saying, "Her name is Rias Gremory." Xerxes looks down to his new sister with a smile on his face and nods his head. "What a beautiful name. Rias, my beautiful little sister." After a few minutes later, Xeoticus then turns to the nurse who happened to be standing in silence behind them, asking, "Can you take me to my son now?" The nurse nods her head and gestures them to follow her. As they walk towards the next room, Xerxes taps Xeoticus on the shoulder, asking, "Have you thought of a name for my brother yet?" After Xerxes asks Xeoticus that question, his eyes become downcast from guilt. "No, your mother and I thought it would be best not to think of a name just in case he didn't survive. To make it easier for us to handle the loss, but now that he survived I don't want to name him. I would want to wait for his mother." Xerxes looks at his father with a face of understanding but says, "Father, I understand your reasoning, but what if mother doesn't wake up in time or not at all? Will you do then? You might have to make the decision now." Xeoticus look at his son with a downcast expression. "I believe you are right." All 4 devils finally make it to the room where the newest member of the Gremory family was, and what they walk in to see is not what they were expecting. Unnamed boy POV. Well, this is getting boring. It has been around 10 minutes and nothing has changed. I can sense what's going, but that got boring real quick. I can sense that there is no one in the room but the other babies around me. So, I open my eyes and I see a very boring white room with average baby pictures. Well, this room is kind of less demonic than I thought. I have never seen any stuff like this before. Very weird. I think these things are supposed to be monitoring my vitals. The thing is, these machines are flawed. They can only read certain types of magic. Since they can't understand my magic, the machines make it seem like I am sick. Interesting, very interesting. Well, that confirms it. I am in another world, but I don't understand why. I should have reincarnated 2000 years in my world, but how did I end up in another world? I don't know how much time has passed, and how could I have ended up in another world? This shouldn't even be possible. So many things I don't understand, but I won't be able to figure that out here. But leaving now right after being born would cause problems for my family. I could start by upgrading these machines to make it to where they can barely comprehend my magic. From what I saw from my mother's memories, my family was worried sick about my condition. To where they were so worried that didn't even think of a name for me, to make it easier for them to move on, which I can't really blame them for. This is also fine since I already have one and I have no intention of changing it. 5 minutes later. That should take care of that, and it should also make it appear as though I have made improvements, but as soon I complete my task, I guess you could say I have been caught with my pants down. The doors open, and judging by the memories I saw from my mother, the two men in red hair are my brother and father, and the one in the maid's uniform is my sister-in-law. And judging by the position I am in, it appears I am trying to crawl out of my container, appearing as though I am about to fall out. Well, this is embarrassing, I think to myself, but before things get weirder, the nurse walks in behind them and runs toward me, thinking I was about to fall out of the container. From outside the container, I can hear them talking, but what I hear intrigues me. My brother says, "Are you going to wait for mother to name him, or are you going to do it on your own?" I think to myself, I don't want another name. Then my father suddenly opens the container and picks me up and seems to have decided on what to name me. I sigh internally, and before my father speaks, I say, "Ano's Gremory will suffice." At that moment the room was silent. Then I look and stare at the three individuals with a blank expression, waiting for their response. Then I speak again. "I think I am speaking the same language as you all. It took me a minute to learn your language, but I should have it down." They look at each other, then look away, seemingly trying to contemplate what was happening. Grafia coughs and gains my attention in the progress. Excuse me, did you say Anos, and may I ask why?" With a cheeky grin on my face, I respond to her with, "Well, it's my name and I don't have any intention of changing it." Grafia nods her head in acceptance of my answer, then passes out. Serzex flies out of his confusion and looks to his wife, who has passed out from shock, and bends down to make sure she is okay. I then look at my father. He was still staring at me like someone has told him something completely outlandish, but before I can utter another word, my father starts crying and hugs me close, saying, "What a wonderful name. Yes, I agree, your name is Anos Gremory." Anos POV. So everything is going quite better than I expected. My sister-in-law is completely passed out in my brother's arms. It seems like he has completely forgotten me for the time being about what I said and has moved his attention to his wife, which I understand. My father seems to be more focused on me being okay and alive, so I assume when comes to his senses his reaction will change also. Lastly, the nurse has also left without me noticing. Shame she missed my first words. Finally, Grafia starts moving and slowly starts talking. "Serzek, did the baby just say that he wants to name himself?" Serzex, who seems to finally have realized what happened, lifts his wife to her feet, and I have to say my sister-in-law has a surprising way of concealing her emotions. Calls immediately after standing, she goes back to a straight-faced demeanor immediately after getting up. Serzex, after looking at his one last time, turns around and sighs. Father, I think we need to, talk about my new little brother." I look at my brother and say, "I assume you both are talking about me." Zeoticus seems to have finally come to the realization of the situation in front of him. "Oh yes, you are right, so Anos, you are talking." But before he could finish his statement, I speak in an understanding tone. "I know you three have questions and I promise to answer them all, but I think it would be best to wait a month or until mother wakes up, so I don't have to explain everything twice, and brother, I mean Lord Lucifer, I suggest you bring the other devil kings." As soon as I said that, I felt an immense pressure come from my brother, and the face I saw from him was not that of a loving brother but that of a king with the power to destroy his enemies. I sighed. "Look, Lord Lucifer, I can promise you this, I am not a threat to the underworld, but I would rather wait until I have enough people around as to not repeat myself twice." Serzek looked at me sternly and said, "Fine, little brother, I will wait until our mother awakes or in a month to thoroughly question your identity and find out how you know my identity after just being born." The immense aura I felt from him seemed to have disappeared, but I could still feel his cold gaze. I then turned my attention to my father, who seemed to be going through different emotions, and then I saw a face of compassion from him which surprised me, thinking that he would have the same reaction as Serzex. I say to him, "Why are you looking at me like that? It's not every day a baby talks right after being born and names himself." "You are right, Anos, it's not every day, and I do have questions, but I doubt you will answer them, so now I am just relieved," my father says with a smile on his, with a tear in his eye being completely wiped away before it could form. When I look into my father's eyes, I see nothing but relief and happiness. Zeoticus POV. "So what do we do now, Anos? Leave you here?" "You aren't a normal child," with a little concern in his voice. Anos looks at me contemplating, then responds, "I suggest you leave me here. I will give you my word I will not leave this room or move from this spot." "Thank you, Anos, I will take you at your word," I say with a smile. Weird, I feel as though I am talking to someone as old as me, I thought to myself. "Come, Serzex, we need to go check up on your mother." He responds to me with a nod. We walk out of the room and I ask Serzex, "What do you think?" And he says, "I don't know, but for some reason, his magic felt like mine but completely different in its way." Well, that would make sense, he should have the power of destruction. Yes, alright father, but it didn't feel like our family's power of destruction. Interesting, but it doesn't seem like he will tell us anything now. Yes, father, but not to sound like I don't trust my new brother, it just seems like I am missing something, and as I stared into his eyes, I saw nothing but the power that shouldn't be taken lightly. Do you think so? When I looked into his, I saw someone who held the weight on his shoulders and has been carrying guilt. It's weird, I just feel like I need to protect him and show him the love of a parent. As I finished those words, I look at Serzex, who had a face of jealousy, and started talking under his breath saying, "Where was this when I was little?" Then I looked to Grafia, looking as cold as usual, but if you were to look harder you could see she was trying to hold back a smirk ever so slightly twitching to the corner of her lips. I look back to my son, placing my hands on his shoulder, and say, "Don't feel bad, nothing could replace how proud I am of you becoming the Devil King Lucifer." After saying that, I could tell his shoulder relaxed completely. After a few moments of silence, we finally reach the room where Venelana was sleeping. As the nurse opens the leading us in, I see a few doctors around, all stepping back, bowing to me and my son. I ask them what the damage report is. A doctor walks up to me and says, "Now Lord Gremory, your wife is currently stable and visible signs of damage. Currently, now she is completely exhausted in a deep coma. The best we can say is that she will not wake until she regains her lost stamina, but the good news is her stamina is slowly growing." I then ask, "How long do you think it will take?" thinking about what Anos told us. The doctors then adopt a thinking pose, then responding, "No more than a month." I chuckle slightly with the doctors looking at me weirdly, then I look to both Serzex and Grafia. He seemingly understands why I chuckle slightly. I look back to the doctor, telling him, "No, it's fine, don't worry about it, may we have a few moments alone with her?" The doctor bowed to me, and the rest left the room. I pull up a chair, sitting next to my wife, grabbing her hand. "I am here, honey." I then begin to tell her about how the children are doing, then leave out the part about Anos talking and the vague statement about needing to talk to all of us. I couldn't lie to myself and say that I didn't feel a little anxious. He's supposed to be a newborn, and yet his voice rings of royalty and demands respect. Also, how does he know who the current Mao are after just being born? I have so many questions, and yet I can't bring myself not to believe or trust in my son. I already did that once, I will never be doing that again. Serzex's inner thoughts. As a new older brother, I feel happy about having a new little brother and sister, but as a current Mao, I feel very anxious. How would a baby know my name and know the other current Mao? Is he a reincarnation of someone from the Civil War or the Great War? If so, then who could it be? Maybe he is one of the original Devil Kings, but how? None of the original Devil Kings can use resurrection. Maybe they escaped Death's domain. I inwardly sigh. Not possible, no one can escape Death's domain without permission. Not even Hades, god of death, can surpass her. I sit there in silence, going through several possibilities, with them all being too outlandish or not making any sense. I can still feel Anos' presence, but it's weird, from I can feel he hasn't moved an inch. At least I can say he is true to his word that he said he wouldn't leave, but not even moving an inch from the spot my father had last placed him in. Very interesting. I look back to my queen to see if she is all right. That was the first time I have ever seen her pass out from shock. It completely threw me for a loop. I will just have to keep my guard up around my brother and be ready to strike at any time. I sit there listening to my father talk about everything that happened, from us talking in the lobby to us walking into the room. I then noticed that he left out the sequence of events with Anos, which I understood if she could hear us through the coma there would be no point in worrying her with that information. After a few minutes, I tell my father that I need to go convene with the other Mao, to which he nods in understanding. I walk out of the room and prepare a teleportation circle with Grafia next to me. We arrive at my office. I go to my desk, place resting both hands under my chin, and I tell my queen in a calm tone to send a message to the other Mao to meet me here. Time skip to May 3rd, almost 1 month later. Anos POV. I am in the Gremory estate, lying in a crib next to my sister. I have to say, being a child is awful. Luckily, I may have the form of a baby. I can change my age at any time, which is what I have been doing. Anytime I am alone, I change my appearance to a man who appears to be in his 20s, even though I am well over 2,000 years old. The only thing about me that my hair has changed. It used to be black, but now I changed it to red hair, with my eyes retaining their red color with a black outline. I stand at 6 feet 1 inch with an athletic build. Though I could have given myself an older body, it's like the physique I had before I died. Okay, but back to the crib. The thing is, now a nurse is, well, changing my diaper. Which I can say is making me angry every time, because every time she does this, I have made myself shit or piss my pants, which is degrading for a demon king, but I made a promise to my brother not to leave this room, and I am a man of my word. Once my mother wakes up, I will be rewriting the past again. I just hope that Hugo La Raviere's guardian deity of time, doesn't bother me this time around, but he may not be this world god of time. Yet I should still be careful when messing with time. Then finally the humiliation ends. I can't believe this. I am the demon king of tyranny, a man feared by all, even gods, yet I need my royal behind whipped. She finally leaves and I let out a sigh and change my form to my adult one. I stretch my arms, look around with my eyes landing on my Ria's, my sister. I walk towards her with a smile, thinking, so this is what it is like to have a sister. I always wanted this, but couldn't. My family died before I was born by humans, so I never got to meet them, and I never wanted to make a family of my own sake in fear that I would lose them how I lost my own. Even so, I am glad I have a little sister and older brother, even though I am older than both combined. I pick up Ria's and walk to a rocking chair. She lets out a smile. I don't how, but I guess I am a baby person now, even though I have never held any other babies besides my sister. Hello, my little sister, how are you doing today? You're just precious. I will always be there for you. Once I say that, I think to myself, I have never been too affectionate towards anyone before. I look back down to Ria's and say, well, I guess you are the cause of this happiness and the new loving family I have. I wouldn't give you up for. But, before I could finish that phrase, I think to myself, what I am doing, I have a kingdom to lead, I can't abandon them, my people are counting on me to return to them and protect them, but I can't deny how to feel towards my new family. With my father, we have very intellectual conversations about things you shouldn't talk about to a baby. Besides that, I enjoy our talks. From time to time he will ask me how my day is and is there anything I need. I simply say no and leave it at that. I can tell he means well, but I can always hear the worry in his voice. Flashback. My father walks into my room to check up on Ria's, not me, which is fine. It's the middle of the night, so I guess it's just his maternal instincts. Hey Anos, are you awake? A soft voice asks me. Yes, father, how can I help you? Is there something that you need? I ask with a confused look. When I ask my question, he seems startled, almost surprised that I am awake. He says in a concerning tone, is there anything that you need? Is your crib uncomfortable? Is that why you are still awake? Let me go get the maid and have her go get a more comfortable crib. Before my father can run out of my room and get the maid. Father, are you okay? Anytime you come and talk to me it seems like there is always something troubling or you keeping your edge. He looks back at me with his hand on the doorknob. I guess I am being overprotective, huh? My father says with a slight grin on his face, but I could tell it wasn't a happy one. Then his face changes to one of regret. Anos, I'm sorry for giving up on you, small tears starting to build on his face. I stand in my crib and ask my father, what do you mean giving up me? Anos, before you had born me, and your mother had given up on you and thought you were going to die, so we decided not to name you to make it easier for us to move on. As I listen to my father talk, I just listen to what he has to say because I can tell this has been eating him up inside. The doctors told us that your body was so weak and that even if you were to survive infancy you would have numerous health problems and not live long. Then when we walked into your hospital room and I saw you standing, which should have been strange for a baby that was just born, but all I could feel was joy. Then when you spoke at first it caught me off guard, but then I could feel nothing but happiness that you could talk. So now I want to make sure all of your needs are met, and this time I will never give up on, and the same can be said for your mother. After hearing my father's explanation, I give him a warm smile and say, Father, you have nothing to worry about me, and you can see I am doing fine. I don't ever feel tired, and my body doesn't hurt. You have nothing to worry about. Also, about you giving up on me, father, I don't hold any ill will towards you or mother. I completely understand. Don't worry, there is nothing in this world that would bring me to hate any of you. In a burst of speed, my father runs toward, picks me up, and starts suffocating me with hugs and kisses on my cheeks, and I can't help but say, I love you to father. Flashback end. After that, my father still comes to me and my sisters and checks on us, but it has decreased by 20% out of 100% of the time. It's fine, I have come to enjoy it a little bit. With Serzex, let's just say at first, he was very cautious when visiting, then slowly began to relax. Then one day I asked. Flashback. How was work? He looked at me with a confused face and said, it's weird for a baby to ask about my life as a devil king. A grin lifted from my face and I said, really well, let me change that. Before he could question my words, I leaped out of my cradle and my body began to grow into an older version of myself in my mid-20s. Serzek instinctively took a defensive stance in front of Ria's. I told them, he does not be alarmed, big bro, it is I, Anos, your baby brother. I have changed my form so we could converse easier if you want. I can change back to the form I had when I was a baby. Serzek's sweat dropped. I could tell by his face that he had 1,000 questions, and they were only growing in number. I know you have 1,000 questions, and believe me, you will get them, I give you my word. From what I could see, he was getting ready for a fight. So, I walked to the nearest chair and sat down. While I did this, he had eyes trained on me. Then Serzek says, "I will take you at your word then." Flashback end. After that, my brother would from time to time come talk to me about life as a devil king, to either ask for advice or complain. Which is the complete opposite with Grafia. For some reason she has become stricter with me than she is with her husband. I can remember the first time she walked in on me and Serzek's having our normal chit-chat. Flashback. Grafia POV. "Have you seen Lord Lucifer?" I asked a maid of the Gremory estate with a tick mark on my forehead. "No, but he has been coming here a lot to go check up on his little brother and sister, so he could be in there." "Ah yes, thank you, I will go check there now." I then walk away before the maid ever has a chance to respond. I think to myself, Serzek, how many times does one devil need to check on their baby siblings in one day? I am starting to think you have an older brother complex. I know that you are worried that Anos will do something to Riaz, but at this point, if he was going to do something, he would have done it. After more ranting in my head, I finally make it to the door. I knock once, but before I don't get an answer, I open it saying, "Lord Lucifer, I know you are in here, and I understand, pardon me, but who is that you are talking to? I was unaware that you had any other relatives." He looks at me, then looks to the individual in question and says, "You were supposed to be making sure no one walks in on us." The unidentified person says, "Ha ha ha ha, apologies, I sensed her a while ago. I just wanted to see if my sister-in-law would pass out again after seeing me." If I wasn't even more confused about who this person was, I am now, but his voice does sound familiar. Serzek stands up and sighs, "Look, I will tell you who this, but don't pass out." I gave him a blank expression and said, "Yes." As I look to Serzek waiting for his answer, he looks as if the information he tells me is about to kill me. Serzek says, "This is Anos, my brother and your brother-in-law." I say, "Hello, Anos." I think to myself, Anos is a baby, but then it clicks: his eyes, his voice, the comment he made earlier about the stain on my reputation. I think to myself, don't pass out, don't pass out. I slowly lift my head from Bo, inwardly trying to pass out from shock. Then it hits him, and I say in a calm tone, "Shit." Before I completely lose consciousness, I hear laughter and a loud sigh before I completely black out. Flashback over. After that moment, Grafia seems to be more on guard for my antics of trying to catch her off guard, but in the beginning, I used to get her 9/10 times, but now she has gotten used to it, and my success rate has dropped to 3/10 times. I must commend her, she adapts quickly. Back to Anos. I stand up and put my sister back in the cradle and sigh, thinking to myself, it will be hard to leave this world, but to save my world I must do this. I walk back to my cradle because I can sense the presence of a maid walking in this direction, and transform back into my baby form and get in my cradle. A few seconds after I get in, I sense magic forming and sense whose magic it is. Looks like my brother has come to talk again. A sudden flash envelops the room and I see my brother, but it's not the face of a brother, it's the one I used to see days ago. He had a cold look in his eyes and he says, a calm tone, "Our mother has awoken, it is time to talk." Venelana Gremory POV. My eyes slowly begin to open and they are met with a piercing light from the sun. I look around confused about where I am, thinking I must have been completely exhausted from labor, but I can't really remember what's anything. I see 4 white walls with a TV on the wall in front of me. I hear beeping from some machines that have tubes coming out of me back into the machines. I look towards the door and I see a clock on the wall. It says it is currently 1:10 in the afternoon. I think to myself, that's weird, I thought I went into labor around 4 p.m. I guess I have been sleeping since yesterday. Giving birth to 2 children must have completely exhausted me. I look back to the TV to see Sarah Leviathan in her magical girl costume singing and dancing. So that would make this the magical girl Silky Spinning 6 or something. I haven't watched the show enough to remember. I see the nurse call button on my bed and I press it to get a nurse's attention. A few minutes later a nurse comes flying in the door. She looks at me with a face mixed with amazement and worry. Before I can ask her to get my husband, she blurts out, "I will be right back, Lady Gremory, let me get the doctor." Before I could offer a reply, she goes back out the door as quickly as she came in and I am left with a puzzled look on my face. I try to think as to why the nurse could have been so shocked at seeing me, and then it hits me, my son and daughter. Did something happen to them after I was in labor? I think I remember the nurse taking my son somewhere, I just can't remember where. While I am laying in the bed trying to brace myself for when the doctor tells me the worst news possible, I let out a silent prayer to myself, asking whoever may be listening, please let both of my children be okay, especially my son. A few minutes after I let out my prayer, a doctor with a few nurses trailing behind comes through the door. He bows to me and with a bright smile, "Good afternoon, Lady Gremory, how are you feeling today?" I look at him feeling a little relieved because, if he was going to give me bad news he wouldn't have a smile on his face. I am doing fine, doctor. I'm just curious about how my children are doing and was wondering where my husband was. The doctor tells me that both of my children are fine and my husband has been contacted and he is on the way. Then the doctor's face changes to a more serious one. Lady Gremory, there is something I have to tell. I nod to him to let him know I am listening. Do you know which day it is? I looked at him with a puzzled look on my face wondering where he was going with this. I respond to him by saying, yes, it is April 10th. He looks at me with a downcast expression. No, it is. But before he could answer the door burst open and I see my husband with tears filled in his eyes running towards me. When he reaches me he embraces me with a big hug and says, I was so worried I thought you would never wake up but I didn't lose hope, I knew you would come back to me. I feel a little puzzled because it has only been one day. Did he really miss me that much? I then thought to myself, wasn't the doctor telling me something before Zioticus barged in? Honey, I have a question. How long have I been asleep? The doctor was going to tell me before you came in. I say, feeling a little worried, but something deep inside me already knew what the answer might be. I looked to both Zioticus and the doctor waiting for one of them to answer my question. The doctor and my husband both look at each other and the doctor looked like he was about to say something. But before he could say anything, Zioticus speaks up first. Don't worry, I will tell her. I look at him feeling a little worried. Venelana, today is not April 10th, it is May 3rd. You have been in a coma for almost a month now. My heart sinks into my chest and I look to my husband staring into his eyes hoping that he was lying, but deep down inside I knew he wasn't lying. I drop my head in shock. I look back to my husband and say, so I guess you already named our son. I'm not mad, I was just hoping we could do it together. I look back up at my husband and I can tell from looking at his face that he was hiding something. He moves his eyes away from mine trying to mask his guilt. I then raise my eyebrow in confusion. You did name our son, right? He looks at me, then opens his mouth, then closes it and repeats this process a few times. He then says, I can tell you this, our son does have a name, it's just a self-proclaimed one. I look at him puzzled, thinking that the name can't be that bad. I ask him, are you just going to leave me guessing, what is it? He sighs, I don't hate his name, I like it, our son's name is Anos Gremory. Before I could question why he chose that name he takes a more serious demeanor, turning to the doctor and saying, how fast can you get my wife out here? The doctor says we can have her checked out as early as 4 p.m. since she doesn't appear to be having any problems. We would just need to run a few tests and she will be good to go. I look at my husband and after speaking with the doctor I see a communication circle appear next to his ear saying, your mother has awakened and will be out of the hospital by 4 today. I hear a few muffled noises and the circle disappears. Then he turns to me with a smile and says, are you ready to get out of here? Scene change to Serzek's office. Yes, father, I will gather the other Mao, and let's plan to have the meeting at 4:30. No need to wait any longer, we have already waited a month. Serzek looks to Grafia and says, the time has finally come to get some answers. Grafia nods to Serzek and says, yes, in the past few days Anos has stayed true to his word and hasn't left his room, but there is one thing. Serzek then looks to Grafia, curious about when she will say next. Anytime I look into his eyes I feel like my very soul is being watched at and is about to be crushed under immense pressure. I know how you feel. When I first saw his face I felt the same thing, even but not as much. They scream of arrogance but not blind arrogance. His eyes are filled with power, but there is no need to try to figure that out. We will find out who he truly is this afternoon. Grafia nods in understanding with the words from Serzek's statement. Time skip to 4:25 Anos POV. I stand up and put my sister back in the cradle and sigh, thinking to myself, it will be hard to leave you behind, but to save my world I must do this. I walk back to my cradle because I can sense the presence of a maid walking in this direction and transform back into my baby form and get in my cradle. A few seconds after I get in I sense magic forming and I can tell whose magic it is. Looks like my brother has come to talk again. A sudden flash of red envelops the room and I see my brother's, but it's not the face of a brother, it's the one I used to see days ago. The face that is as cold as ice. Serzek Lucifer, and he says in a demanding tone, our mother has awoken, it is time to talk. I nod with a grin on my face saying, let's go. I take a step forward then stop. Who will watch Riaz and which form should I take? Serzek contemplates what I said with a thinking pose, then responds by saying, we will bring Riaz with us and I think we should start with your baby form, then you can change to make sure everyone has your undivided attention. I nod my head in agreement. Serzek conjures up 2 trollers and gestures for me to get in one as he walks to pick up Riaz. In the troller I see Serzek bending over putting Riaz in the troller next to me. A few seconds later I see a bright light and I can hear different voices, but I can already tell who they already are. There is a female voice talking to someone about her newest Magical Girl episode, and I can tell by his responses that he doesn't care. That must be Seraphor Leviathan, known as the strongest female devil, who is an ultimate class devil. The power I sense from her is not bad, but nowhere near mine. She seems to be on par with some of my demon emperors. The next person I can tell by the sound of his voice is Ajuka Beelzebub, and I can tell by his conversation with Seraphor that he's trying to escape. The power I can sense is very good, even rivaling my brother's. I also hear snoring, which can be none other than Falbium Asmodeus. If he stays asleep while I am talking, I will make him regret it. His power isn't bad, but I have seen better. I also hear another female voice. I can tell by her voice that she is my mother. I feel my heart begin to beat a little faster as I hear her voice getting louder and louder. Then I hear, are these both Anos and Rias? Then I hear the voice of my father say, yes, let me introduce them to you. I suddenly see my father and mother hovering over me and my sister. My dad picks me and my mother picks up Rias. My mother looks at my sister and starts drenching my sister in kisses and hugging her tightly, then placing her back down. Then my father handed me to my mother, and I can tell by my mother's face that I was going to get the same amount of love that my mother gave my sister, maybe even more. 10 minutes later. I am soaked in kisses, gasping for air. I felt like she would have kept going if father and brother had not stopped her. My mother places me back in the carriage and says, I am still puzzled as to why I had to come straight here after just waking up out of a coma. After hearing this, I can tell that the rest of the participants had similar comments. Seraphor, yeah, why are we here? All you said was that you a very important message. Wait, is this about your new siblings, are trying to show off? I won't stand for this challenge, let me go get my sister as well, she is 10 times cuter. Serzek responds in a calm, demanding tone, I did not bring you all here to show off my, but before he could continue I say, calm tone, this is taking too long. The room went silent, everyone trying to figure out where that voice came from except for Zeoticus, Serzex, and Graphia, since they already knew whose voice it was. Before anyone can question the voice, I jump out of the carriage with everyone looking at me in amazement, except for one individual still sleeping. My eyes flicker and the table disappears, causing him to fall to the floor. Then I quickly create a new table in a matter of seconds. I suggest you wake up because I will not be repeating myself, and if you really want to sleep I can just kill you now, I say with a mocking grin on my face. The moment that happened, the Devil Kings besides Serzex were seemingly thrown out of their confusion, which had been cleared up by the threat that was cast by myself. Before they can react, Serzex looks at me with an annoyed face. I nod my head in understanding. I look away from him and back to their 3 Devil Kings, my father, then lastly my mother, and then back to the other 3 Devil Kings awaiting for me to make a move. I sigh and say, let me offer you an apology, Falbium Asmodeus. I didn't know the best way to introduce myself, so I decided why not crack a joke to get everyone's attention. A joke, you say? You think threatening one of the 4 Devil Kings is a joke? We don't even know who you are, blurted out Ajuka in a tone of annoyance. Anos Gremory, I blurt out as soon as he finishes his statement. He looks at me with an eyebrow raised, but before he can say something else I say, before we begin with any more questions, there is someone I need to formally apologize to. Venelana POV. I am sitting in my chair in utter shock. A man with red hair and red eyes is standing just a few feet away from me, who has seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Then he blurts the craziest thing I have ever heard. He says that his name is Anos Gremory. The thing is, who would believe such a blatant lie? But as I am thinking that very thing, my eyes trace back to the trollers that Anos was supposed to be in, and I see that it is empty. I quickly look back to the man who claims he is Anos and I stare at his eyes, and then it clicks for me. It is him, it's my baby. I don't know how this happened, but there is no mistaking his eyes. They are the same ones I saw when he was in my arms moments ago. I quickly walk towards him with tears beginning to build in my eyes. Anos, it's you, isn't it? I can tell. I am your mother. I could never forget your beautiful eyes, I said in a caring voice, trying not to give away my hesitation. He looks to me almost puzzled by the statement I just said, with a smile starting to form on his face. I can feel the atmosphere in the room slowly start to calm down, but before I can ask another question, both his arms quickly pull me into a hug and he says in a soft voice, sorry mom. I looked up at him puzzled, asking, him, for what? He then says in an apologetic voice, for hurting you. I looked up to him still just as confused as before, maybe even more. He tells me, don't worry, I am about to reveal everything, just but accept this as an apology. As soon as he uttered those words, a small bright light came from the palm of his hands and a necklace appeared, but the necklace I saw was the most beautiful piece of jewelry I had ever seen, and I know my jewelry. Then suddenly it started to float over my head, then rest around my neck. I look back to Anos, seeing that something was troubling him. I then say, hey, what's wrong? Anos then tells me in a calm tone, before I was born I had figured out that I was in another world and I used a spell to look into your memories but it caused you to pass out which then led you to go into a coma. It really was not my intention to hurt you. I look at him with a smile on my face while patting his head. You don't have to worry, I know you would never hurt me. Just from now on make sure you watch how you use that spell. Anos then said, thank you mother, that means a lot. Okay, that concludes my apology. Mother, could you please take a seat, this will be a long conversation. I nodded in agreement and then I changed my attitude, narrowing my eyes and giving him a cold gaze. Also, if you destroy another table or threaten another devil king, and you and I will be having a long chit-chat about respecting those in authority and not destroying furniture. He nodded with an arrogant grin on his face then. I furrowed my eyebrows, releasing a bit of my aura, and his grin disappeared, adopting a more serious tone and says, yes, I understand. I then walk back to my seat, look at the other devil kings who are the only ones still standing besides Graphia. I say, excuse me, would you three mind taking a seat? I think Anos wants to get started. The three of them look at me like I just said the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. Serzex then offers his opinion and says, let us hear him out. I can say that this is truly Anos, my brother. I do not know how he looks the way he does, and has not told me anything but has given me his word that he will and was only willing to give it once our mother had awoken. Anos POV. After my brother's statement, he looks nodding at me to continue. I then say, I guess I should start with my true name. It is Anos Voldigo, the Demon King of Tyranny. When I say this I get a lot of confused glances before anyone can ask a question. Continue by saying, please hold your questions until I am done because I might answer while I am taking. 5 minutes later. I lived in an orphanage. 10 minutes later, so I personally destroyed their entire town, showing no mercy. Another 10 minutes and that's how I became the first and the current Demon King. 1 hour later. It didn't take long for the gods to get involved, creating the only sword in existence that can kill me. Finally, I come to a close, telling them about all atrocities I committed, how I longed for peace and how I gave my life for it. By sacrificing my life to stop the 2000-year war. Then I say, letting out a big yawn, does anyone have any questions? The first person to speak is Serzex. So you are from another world, I assume you didn't come here because you wanted to. Do you know how you got here? I respond to his question by saying, no, I was supposed to reincarnate 2000 years later in my world, not this one, so I don't know how I ended up here, while crossing my arms and shrugging my shoulders. So I have a question, how old are you? Wait, I have another, how strong are you? Blurts out Seraphor with her hand raised, shaking it around all while leaping out of her chair. I smile at her saying, well, I was born again a month ago, but before I died I was 2000 years old. So I would say 2000 years and a month. For your last question, I would say at my full power, let's just say even Great Red wouldn't be able to stop me. Everyone in the room's mouth drops in surprise. It is not every day you hear that there is someone on par with or even greater than Great Red. The first person to react to my question is Ajuka by saying, wait a second, you just said that at full power, did you lose all of your power or most of the power you previously had before dying? I nod in agreement. Yes, in my world newly reincarnated demons can only utilize 10% of their full power. So Ajuka responds with another question by saying, with only 10% of your power, how strong are you now? I adopt a thinking pose and respond by saying, if we are going purely by the amount of magic, I would say if you combine both of the heavenly dragons I would still have 20 times more magic than them, but if we go by purely magic abilities I could still put up a good fight with Great Red, but I would 100% lose. They all look at me in amazement. Even with only 10% of my full power I still far outclass any of them. About few more hours pass and I get bombarded with questions. Staying true to my word, I answered all of them to the best of my abilities. Even Graphia was chiming in from time to speaking more frequently. I then say, is that it? Because there is something I need to bring to everyone's attention. They look at me puzzled, but after everything else, I have said it couldn't be too crazy. A while ago, Serzex, you asked me do I plan on staying here, and I said no, and I gave you my reason why. Serzex adopts a puzzled look, wondering where I was going with this. Zeoticus stands up saying in a calm tone, I think I know where you are going with this. I believe you are talking about who will be the next head of the Gremory family when you leave, and when you leave how will we cover it up, because by now almost everyone knows of your existence. After my father lets out his explanation, everyone starts to realize the predicament. Ajuka then adapts a thinking pose, looking as if he is thinking of something, and then says, I have a solution to make Riaz the head of the family in an inconspicuous way. Earlier when you told us about your abilities you said that your eyes of destruction, which is not the power of destruction but different, right? I nodded, letting him know I understand, and he continues by saying, we can make Riaz the new head of the family since I assume she must have the power of destruction. Zeoticus responds by saying, we haven't figured it out yet, but if she does have the power of destruction then we can think about it when the time comes, but what if she doesn't? What do we do then? He looks to everyone waiting to see if anyone else has a better idea. He could marry me. I am a mouse, so I hold more authority than him, so we could change his last name to Leviathan, which would intel make Riaz the head of the family. This would make a fine plan if I do say so myself, says Sarah Fall when cheerful attitude. The room goes quiet, everyone with sweat running down their faces. Serzek is the first one to recover and stutters out, Sarah Fall, that wouldn't be helping us, you do understand that, right? I mean, we are not trying to make him the head of another family. Besides, why am I explaining this? You already know why that is a bad idea. Sarah Fall adopts a downcast expression and says, I know. We go on for a few minutes bouncing ideas off of each other, finally coming up with two plans for the household situation. One is when Riaz awakens her power of destruction, she becomes the new head of the family, or me voluntarily giving it up so Riaz can take it. We agree that this is the best course of action. As for me getting back to my world, they all admitted that there are different dimensions, but traveling to another reality hasn't been thought of since before now. They all thought that their reality was the only one, which I can't fault them for. My mother then stands, gaining my attention, and says in a scared tone, almost afraid to ask her question, Anos, I have another question. Since you reincarnated, does that mean you aren't my son? I look to my mother and see that she is holding back tears, trying to hide worry. My father sees this and starts holding her hand, understanding where her worry is coming from. I smile at my mother and say, if you were to do a blood test, you would see a combination of you and father's blood flowing through my veins. Although I have a first mother, you very much are 100% my second mother, or better yet, you would be my only mother by the standards of this world. My mother looks at me with water beginning to slowly fall down her face, says, thank you, Anos. I give my mother a warm smile, easing her worry. I then ask, does anyone has any other questions before I end this meeting? Falbium stands up saying, what do you plan to do now? I plan to spend my time growing up along with my sister while trying out how to figure how to get home, and technically I am still a baby, so I have to grow up like one. Falbium nods in understanding, then sits back down. If no one has any more questions, that conclude question and answer time. My mother gestures for me to come to her, and she says with a blush on her cheeks, I know you are over 2,000 years old, but could you transform back into a baby so I can hold you and your sister some more? I look at my mother and start laughing and say, sure thing. 17 years later. Hello, Anos, how have you been? It's been 2 or 3 months now? How is your work going with Ajuka? Says Serzek with a friendly smile on his face. I am doing fine. Well, first let me say I have learned, because I wanted to try to use that as a base, and now Ajuka and I are looking into using teleportation as a foundation for moving between realities, but we haven't figured it out yet, but I can say we have made some headway. Are you planning on leaving again anytime soon, Anos? Somebody has been eagerly waiting for your return. I know. I plan to go see Riaz later on today. You better hurry, she is leaving next year. Anos looks to Serzek with a confused look on his face, saying, what do you mean by that? Why is she leaving the underworld? Serzek places 2 fingers on his forehead and begins messaging it, letting out an annoyed sigh. You have been gone for a while and some things have changed, but before I tell you why, let me explain everything to you uninterrupted. Anos takes a more serious demeanor, saying, tell me everything and leave nothing out. Okay, it all started after the civil years ago. 10 minutes. So father and I had to make a choice with the Phoenix family. Basically it was a trade and you were supposed to be the one to get married, but that changed because. A few minutes later. So Riaz will take your place and will get married after she graduates from Human College. I can't believe that you and father agreed to something like this, especially you since you are Devil King. Anos say this with annoyance and anger laced in his voice, but I know you wouldn't force our sister into an arranged marriage without a way to get her out. So do you plan to let me in on the plan or leave me guessing? Serzek nods with a small grin forming on his face and says, it seems you know me all too well. 30 minutes later, Anos POV. I am walking towards the doors of the Gremory mansion with a bag over my shoulder. Before I reach the door, I can sense someone's presence standing in front of the door. Looks like she noticed I was here long before I got close to the door. I guess she has become more confident in using her abilities. I reach the door, opening it, saying, I'm home. I look down to see a petite girl with white hair staring at me with a blank expression. Well, come home, Anos, she says, in a monotoned voice with no emotion plastered on her face. I smile at her and pat her head, saying, thanks Koneko, glad to be home. The now named Koneko looks at me and says in her usual voice with little hints or worry, did you find a way back to your home yet? Author's note, couldn't figure out how old Koneko was when she got saved by Serzek, but I know in the show she is 15 during the time of season 1, so I'm gonna assume that she has been in Riaz's peerage for 1 or 2 years at the start of the anime. Flashback 2 years ago. I am walking down the hallway with my hands in my pocket just wandering around. It is around 5:30 in the afternoon and the sun is going down. I walk past the balcony in the Gremory mansion. I look out the window to see both Riaz and Serzek standing there talking to each other while ever so often gesturing towards a little girl with white hair standing between them looking at the ground. I think about going out there, but if Serzek wanted me to attend this conversation he would have told me, so I walk away to my room to get ready for bed. It's now 7 o'clock and I hear a knock on the door. I open it to see Riaz looking at me with a worried expression. I ask her, "What can I do for you, Ms. Otaku?" The depressed expression she previously had changed to that of annoyance. "I have told you to stop calling me. Do you want me to say the nickname everyone else says about you?" But before she can finish I stop her and say, "Fine you in, what can I do for you?" Her expression changes from the pouting face she was holding, to a cheeky smirk and back to the downcast expression she had when she came in. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I back away from the door gesturing for her to come in. Ever since Riaz and I were little she would always come to either me or her friend Sona Citri about either advice or problems she was having. I ask her after she sits down, "How can I help you sis? I'm guessing this has to do with that girl that was with you and Serzek." She looks to me with hope in her eyes. "Yes, how do you know? Have you already come up with a plan to help her?" "Please." I put my hand up shaking my head from left to right saying, "No, I don't know that girl's story. All I know is that she was with you while talking to Serzek." But while I am saying this to Riaz, I can see the hope slowly leave her eyes. I then continue by saying, "But if you tell me what's going on I may be able to offer some advice for you." After saying that Riaz perks up a little bit, then for the past hour she tells everything she learned about Koneko from Serzek. After hearing the story from Riaz I ask her something that I picked up on from the story she told. "Let me double back real quick and stop me if get something wrong." She nods in understanding, then I continue. "You say that her sister went berserk after losing her mind to Senjutsu, kills everyone in the mansion, yet her sister survives all of this. Do I have this correct?" She nods her head confirming what I just said. I then adopted a more serious demeanor leaning forward. "You say her sister goes berserk and kills her master and everyone else except for someone who happened to be her sister. You also say that she lost control but someone how was able to get her control back?" Riaz looks to me as if she has the answer. "Maybe her sister was able to pull her out of it. And apparently, she took in too much Senjutsu and that's how she lost control." I then answer her by saying, "If that is the case why did her sister leave her behind? They could have easily escaped together." Riaz responds to my question by saying, "Maybe there wasn't enough time after Koneko calmed her down so she had to leave her." I look to her with a doubtful expression. I doubt that Koneko was able to stop her sister. Which I can tell by the way she carries herself that she couldn't. "So what are you saying, brother? To be honest, a lot of the story you told me makes sense if you are just listening to the story and at face value, but as you look more into it more things tend not to add up." She says to me with disappointment in her voice. "How is analyzing her story going to help me connect with her?" A grin begins to form on my face. "If you want to unlock a broken person's heart you have to find the key to get in." She looks at me puzzled. "Riaz, give me a few days and I will see what I can do." "Okay, but please don't frighten her with your antics." I look at her with a grin. "I don't know what you mean." A few days later. I have observed Koneko these past few days and I can say she is completely broken. She stays in her room never coming out, only when the servants place her food in front of the door. Even then I see she barely touches anything except for the dessert. When I listen closely I can hear the TV, and from time to time I can hear her working out while suppressing her powers. It took me a few days to figure out how to help, but this is taking too long so I figured I would just wing it. When I talk to her tomorrow. The next day. I walk up to Koneko's room and I knock once and hear nothing. I can sense she is in there but doesn't answer the door. It seems that she is in the corner of the room crouched down. I knock 2 more times and say, "Fine, if you don't answer I'll just come in." I walk towards the door flicking it with my finger and the door does flying off the hinges and through the window and breaking part of the wall in the process. I think to myself, crap, mother is going to have a fit. Then before I can restore everything to what it was I hear Anos, from the very person I didn't want to see this mess from outside. "What the hell do you think you are doing? I have told time and time again stop destroying my home. When I get up there I will make you regret this." I hear my mother's wings from outside and I teleport in front of Koneko, who was caught off guard from me appearing in front of her. I pick her up in a princess pose saying, "Let's talk somewhere else." We teleport to the top of the mansion. I then instantly cast a barrier with a bit of cancelling magic so no one can see or hear us. Then I sit her down in front of me. Koneko, who I assume has come out of her shock from everything, doesn't look at me, says, "Why did you bring me here?" I look at her and act like I am thinking up something hard, and with a small grin on my face I say, "All I wanted to do was talk to you. Is that so bad?" She doesn't respond, she just keeps looking down at her feet. So you are a Nekomata, but from what I can sense you trying to suppress your power. Koneko flinches a little bit and slowly takes a few steps back, saying in a flat monotone voice, "Why do you care? I just don't understand why you are hiding your power, you should own it." In a voice laced with fear, she says, "Because if I lose control I could hurt people." There was silence for a few seconds and I say, "Is that it? I thought there would be more to it than that." She looks at me in surprise and looks back down. "If you heard the story from Lady Rias, then you know why I must suppress my power." "Yes, I heard the story, so I guess I can understand why, but that doesn't mean you have to suppress it." Koneko scoffs in annoyance. "Of course, you wouldn't understand." I go to a knee and say, stare into her eyes, "You would be surprised." Koneko looks away and says, "No you wouldn't, your life has been easy compared to mine." I let out a small chuckle and I create a table, 2 chairs, and a few sweets on the table. I see Koneko's nose twitch a little and I smirk by saying, "How about this? I will let you eat all the snacks you want and all you have to do is listen to a story and tell me how you feel about it. Once we do that I will let you leave." A few moments later she nods in agreement and turns to walk to the table with snacks on them. When the both of us reach the table I begin by telling her a short story about my past life, leaving out that it is about me. A few minutes later she says, "He sounds like an anime character, did you find this story from a movie?" I let out a chuckle, but I can say that he had his reasons for doing what he did and I respect his resolve to continue to push forward. "Really, you think so? Let me ask you this then. Do you think he should have suppressed his power?" "I don't know. On one hand, he used his power to protect his people, and on the other hand other people feared his power and viewed him as a tyrant." "I see, so do you believe he was a tyrant?" She pauses. "Yes, in my opinion he is a monster." For the next few days, Koneko and I would talk about my life without revealing that I was talking about myself. The more we talked and the more she slowly opened up to me. "So now tell me what you think about him." Koneko stops eating and slowly speaks. "I still don't know. The more you tell the story the more I believe he shouldn't have suppressed his power, but he still hurt a lot of people in the end, even if it was to save his people." "Yes, you are right, but if he never used his power he would have lost a lot more, am I right?" Koneko stuffs a few more snacks into her mouth and nods in agreement. "So do you still believe he was a monster?" "No, I guess he used his power to protect his people, so suppressing his power wouldn't be helping people, only causing more suffering." I nod in agreement. Sir Anos, can I ask you something?" "Sure, go ahead." "So who is this individual? In the story you have been telling me is too detailed to be made up. Also, the way you tell it, it just seems you have seen this firsthand." I stare at her, contemplating if I should reveal my little secret, then I respond to her staring into her eyes saying, "Can you keep a secret?" She nods. "As you said earlier, the story is too detailed to be made up. To answer your question, yes, the story is real and the person in the story is me." She looks up to me for the first time, making eye contact, saying, "What do you mean it's you?" I then tell her the same story I told the others a few years ago in a more shortened version, not lasting hours. There is a moment of silence for a long time and she says, "This sounds too crazy to be true, but I can say after our past few conversations that you aren't someone who lies. Do you believe me?" Koneko looks into my eyes, hoping to find a hint of deceit. I say, with a smirk, "Let me prove it to you then." My eyes flicker, showing off my eyes of destruction, staring straight into her eyes. Koneko falls out of her chair and onto the floor, staring at me in disbelief and shaking in fear, slowly backing away. My eyes of destruction disappear and smirk. "Don't worry, I mean you no harm. I am not going to hurt you." I offer her my hand to help her up. She takes it and I can feel it shaking, then I gesture her to take a seat. I then ask her as she stares at me in disbelief, "Do you think I am a monster?" She pauses, staring at the ground, trying to figure out what to say, and then stutters out, "If I would have heard your story without knowing you, then I would have said yes, but now I can say after talking to you, that you are not a monster." I nod in understanding, then she looks up to me and I can tell by looking into her eyes I can see little flickers of hope. "How did you do it? How are you able to control your power and not hurt your allies?" I respond to her by saying, "Easy, I simply mastered it so I would never lose control." She looks at me with the hope in her eyes slowly starting to burn brighter. "Could you teach how me to control mine? I am scared of my power and I don't want to lose control like my sister and hurt the ones close to me." I could hear the depth of resolve in her voice and say, "Sure, if you are that determined to control your power I will help." "Oh yes, before I forget, don't speak to Rias about this. I plan to tell her eventually, but not anytime soon." Koneko nods her head in understanding and asks, "What should I call you now since you are a king? Would Lord Anos suffice or?" But before she could continue I say, waving my hand in disapproval, "You don't have to say that. I don't care for formalities." Koneko blushes a little bit and whispers, "Would just Anos suffice?" "Sure, I don't mind." She looks up at me in surprise and embarrassment and says, "Wait, you heard that?" I nod my head, letting a smirk form on my face. She glares at me and then a smirk forms on her face. "Okay, Anos, after that, I would train Koneko with her Nekomata powers. After a while, she then starts to open up to Ria's more, even letting her see her in her Nekomata form." Flashback end. No, not yet, but I have made some headway. I look into her eyes and I can see a hint of sorrow. I continue patting her head saying, "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere yet." She nods in understanding, but I can still see the sadness in her eyes. I look away for a little bit while looking around and saying, "Where is everyone else?" Rias and Akino went to go talk to Sona, Kiba is training with Suji, and Gasper is still sealed in the basement. Also, before you ask, your parents are talking to the Phoenix family, but I don't know why. I nod in understanding, already knowing what they are talking about. Then I feel Koneko grab my hand and start to pull me outside. "Let's go spar." I smirk and say, "Fine, show me how much stronger you have become." A few moments later, a few feet away from the Gremory estate, I cast a barrier to not alert anyone as to what we are doing. I then look to Koneko, who is already in a battle stance with her ears and tail out. I lift my finger and gesture her to come at me. She comes at me in a burst of speed and cast a few illusions to hide amongst her clones. The clones circle me, and I dodge their kicks and punches. I then reach my hand to the side, catching something in my hand and crushing it. I then jump back and the earth shatters from where I was standing. My red eyes flicker and the illusion is destroyed, and I see Koneko appear in the crater with the heel of her foot in the center. "You need to work on your illusions more. I can tell you have been working on your strength thanks to your rook piece, but you can't forget to sharpen your other tools." She nods and disappears into another illusion. "Do you think that will work again?" My question is met with silence. I look around waiting for her to attack and I feel her presence behind me. I turn to see her with two other illusions in front of her. I raise an eyebrow knowing that it's a trap, but I charge in, flying past the other two illusions in a burst of speed, punching her in the stomach. She coughs up blood, then disappears in a puff of smoke. I raise my eyebrows in surprise, then I look to my left and see three more Konekos running towards me. I flash my red eyes again to dispel the illusion, but to my surprise, none of the Konekos disappear and I can see a smirk form on her face, and all of a sudden at least 20 Konekos jump from the trees. Some start throwing blue fire at me while others try to catch me in a pincer attack. I smirk to myself and think, excellent, she knows I can see through her illusions and read her senjutsu easily. She also knows that I can tell which are clones created through illusion. So that is what this is. A small smirk form on my face, and I flex my aura in a burst of power, creating a shock wave. Some of the clones go up in a poof of smoke while others are thrown back. "You have shown me the depth of your resolve, so let me give you this as a reward." I leap back and point a finger at one of the clones, and a small fireball the size of a quarter shoots out of my hand. All of the Koneko's eyes go wide and they all cast a barrier to brace themselves. The small fireball goes flying at high speed and hits one of the Konekos, cracking her barrier like it was glass, and a blast erupts about the size of a small baseball field, with threes being destroyed instantly. And once the smoke clears, I see one Koneko still standing in a crater with no signs of life around her. Her clothes are ruins, burn marks on her body, and gasping for air. She has two hands outstretched with a small blue fire. She fires it towards my head and I lean my head to the right and dodge the attack. I lift my hand and catch something in my hand about to hit my head and slam it to the ground, forming a crater. I see Koneko with a grin on her face that changes to one filled with annoyance, and then she goes up in a puff of smoke. I look down to see the real Koneko lying in a crater after I slammed her on the ground unconscious. I bend down and cast healing magic on her and create new clothes over her body. Koneko's POV. I awaken to see all of my injuries gone, but I'm not a bit surprised because I know the power that Anos wields. But I do finally come to the realization where I am. I see a man with red hair and red eyes looking at me with his famous cocky smirk. I sit up, noticing where I was laying and with my back to him, trying to hide my blush. "What do you think?" I feel a warm hand on my head and with a calming voice I hear, "I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't a little surprised." I turn around trying to hide my excitement with my blank expression, saying, "Really?" He smirks and asks, "How did I create those physical clones?" "I got the idea from this show I was watching. The boy in the show could create identical clones. So I used what I saw in the show to see if I could do the same. It took a while, but I was finally able to do it." Anos praises me for this accomplishment, and asks how many clones I am able to make. I respond to him by saying, "I don't know, it depends. If I don't enhance myself with my Nekomata powers, only 10, but when I do I feel like I can make at least a 100, but I haven't tried because it gets real exhausting creating too many clones." He nods his head in understanding. I look around to see that the forest is back to the way it used to be. I then ask, am I getting stronger? Anos looks away as if trying to figure out what to say, then with a glint in his eye saying, I would say you have grown a lot since we first trained. I am very impressed. With time your illusions could surpass even mine's, and you could be able to even cast illusions on me that not even I could not see through. I look at Anos surprised at what he said. I doubt it, you're the most powerful person I have ever known. To think I could surpass you at anything is crazy. He chuckles at me and says, look Koneko, the only thing remotely powerful about me is my ability to destroy and the immense magical power I wield. So all you need to do is keep progressing your power and one day you definitely could. I look at him in surprise with my black expression, with hope filling my eyes. I nod at him, a small grin on my face. I will definitely surpass you. He stands up with his hand outstretched and says, I hope so. 20 minutes later. Anos and Koneko are walking back to the estate, with Anos stopping and looking at a mountain in the distance. Koneko bumps into Anos saying, hey, what are you doing? He looks down to Koneko and back to the mountain with a grin saying, it's nothing, don't worry about it. On the very mountain where Anos was looking, a woman with long black hair and pointy ears poking out from her hair, with dark grey eyes that have reptilian slitted pupils. The unknown woman is currently sitting on a rock in a gothic Lolita outfit with a grin on her face. His power is intriguing and slowly growing each day. Yes, I will need you to regain my silence. Anos POV. Koneko and I take our separate ways when we enter the mansion. I can hear yelling echoing in the halls. I think to myself, sounds like Father and Rias are fighting again. I make my way to the dining hall where I hear yelling. I stop in front of the door listening to what they have to say before coming in. I don't want to marry that jerk, I would rather marry someone I love. Why can't you understand that? Through the door, I can hear my father sigh in annoyance, the head of the Phoenix family, and I have been planning this for a long time. That doesn't seem fair, why should I have to get married, why not Anos? He can easily marry Ravel, it doesn't have to be me. I can tell through the door that Rias is slowly getting more and more aggravated as the conversation carries on. That is true, but he doesn't have the power of destruction like you do. I can feel Rias flare her aura out in annoyance saying, why do you guys keep doing this to him? First, you take away his birthright just because he doesn't have the power of destruction. Then all you ostracized him for it as if he is not part of the Gremory family. Are you guys just blind? Anos is so smart it's scary, his sword skills are amazing, and not to mention people call him a prodigy with magic. Through the door, I can hear her voice strain as if she is about to cry. The only difference between me and him is the fact that he doesn't have the power of destruction. Rias, you don't understand, there are things behind the scenes you can't see. But don't misunderstand, I am proud of Anos more than you think, but we need to carry on our family's power, and since Anos doesn't have the power of destruction, it has to be you. The argument goes on for 5 more minutes before I enter the door with a grin on my face saying, hello, I'm back from Aduka's. I look at my sister and I can see both relief and excitement in her eyes. Anos, you're back. Rias darts to me, giving me a huge hug, burying her face in my chest, then looking up to me with a bright smile saying, why didn't you call in advance, I would have met you at the door. I pat her on the head and look to my father, who was rubbing his forehead as if he just had the biggest headache. I then look back down to Rias, who was still smiling and hugging me with a grin on my face. I looked at both of them saying, hope I wasn't interrupting anything important. Both Rias and my father's expressions changed, taking a darker tone. Rias lets go of me, lowering her head, trying to mask her frustration. It's nothing, Anos. Father was trying to make me do something I didn't want to, so I told him no. She looks back up to me and I look into her eyes as if I am searching for something, then I tell her, okay, if you ever need anything just tell me, I would be happy to help. She smiles and nods and asks me, did you master a new magic while working with Aduka? I shook my head no in disapproval with a cocky grin saying, no, I mastered 3 new magics. Norse, Olympian, and fairy magic. Rias looks at me in amazement. Well, really, I didn't know devils could learn other types of magic. I smile at her. It's possible. It's just on a different wavelength, and all you have to do is find the correct wavelength. She looks at me with hope in her eyes saying, do you think I could learn other types of magic? I want to learn transformation magic. I chuckle at her saying, why, so you can transform into your anime characters, and before she can say anything in retaliation, I teleport out the room into Koneko's room. She looks up at me with a blank expression and just shakes her head at me, already knowing why I am here. Then she just turns back to the show she was watching while continuing to eat her sweets. I can feel the mansion shake and I can sense Ria's power of destruction flaring out. I can also hear maids screaming, oh no, Lady Rias is throwing another fit, with another one saying, do you think it was Lord Anos again? With another saying, probably, knowing him, her probably said something about her otaku addiction. I chuckle to myself and sit next to Koneko on the couch. She offers me some of the candy she was eating and I gladly take it and begin to wait for Rias to calm down from her fit. I think to myself I really shouldn't tease her like this, then again I can't help it, she makes it too easy. A few minutes pass and I can feel her aura diminish over time until it's gone, showing that she has calmed down. I get up from my couch stretching my arms, sending Koneko a wave with her waving back to me. I then teleport to the door of my father's study. I knock once and wait for an answer. A few moments later I hear him say, "Enter." I walk in. My father looks to me with a smile on his face. "I'm glad to see you. I have been meaning to talk to you." I chuckle. "That's funny, same here." My father raises his right eyebrow, showing that he is curious about what I have to say. "So do you want to go first or shall I, Anos my boy?" I walk to the chair in front of my father's desk. "You are the head of the family, so you can." "Thank you, I shall." "So how are things going with finding a way to get home? Do you want the short or the long story?" My father then looks to the ceiling and says, "I'll take the long story since we have time until dinner is ready." I nod jokingly, saying, "You're gonna need a notepad." He looks at me confused, then I continue with my explanation. When I arrived at Ajuka's, we both did research on different magics that are used to travel between dimensions. 10 minutes later, so my studies lead me to learn about Norse magic because of the Bifrost. So I thought I could try and use something like that to get home. 30 minutes later, after seeing that I could use Norse magic, Ajuka stops in his research and fanboys over the fact that I learned another magic. Then one way led to another. I learned both fairy and Olympian magic, but the only reason I chose those two was because I thought they could be useful for getting back home. Another 10 minutes later. So that's all that happened and we got nowhere, but nowhere is somewhere in my book. I look at my father's face and I see on his face that he's relieved after hearing my story. I see, so you are still in the same position as last time. Anos, don't you think it's time to give up? You have been trying to get back for 16 years now. I know you are very smart and if anyone can figure out how to get back it's you, but at this point maybe it's not possible even for someone like you. I shake my head in disapproval. "I'm sorry, father, I understand how feel, truly I do, but I can't give up on my people." My father nods in understanding with sorrow in his eyes and tries to change the subject by saying, "It is your turn. What did you have to talk to me about?" In a flat tone, letting my father know I am not joking. "Why are you making Rias get married to that disgusting, incest-loving Riza?" My father pinches his nose and sighs. "Well, for starters, he isn't in a relationship with his sister." "Then why is she in his peerage?" "Anos, how many times have we been over this? Ravel was traded by her mother to Riza because their mother doesn't participate in rating games anymore. And so Ravel can gain experience on how the games work." I raise my eyebrow, doubting his word. "I doubt it. He looks like he will mate with anything that has a pretty face and a nice body." My father smirks. "So you think Ravel is cute and has a nice body? Maybe I should arrange for you to meet." I stare into my father's eyes with a cold gaze. He waves his hand. "Calm down, it was only a joke, but I assume you have already talked to your brother, and whatever he told is the truth partially. Another reason I am making her get it engaged is for a few personal reasons." "And what are they?" I say this while leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms. "The most important reason is because of you and Serzex." I raise my eyes, brown in confusion. "Look, Anos, you and brother both give something to Rias that she doesn't need to look for in other guys." I continue to stare at my father, wondering where he was going with this. For Serzex, he completely spoils her and is looser around her. With you, it's the opposite. You are more defensive while at the same time you show gentlemen should treat a lady. So if a guy doesn't fit the standards that she sees from both her brother. This isn't a bad thing, but now Rias has a high standard when it comes to boys, and if they don't meet those standards she doesn't notice them. As my father tells me his reasoning, I start to contemplate everything he has told me, and I can't lie, Rias has been in a protective shell for almost all of her life. So is that part of the reason why you are allowing her to go to the human world? You want her to learn to grow on her own without having me and Serzex around. My father nods his head yes, but father, I still don't understand why it has to be Riza. If there is one man I don't approve of marrying my little sister, it's Riza. Well, Anos, this agreement goes back long before you and Rias were born, and the Devil Council also has their foot in this marriage, so even if I wanted to end the marriage I can't. I roll my eyes in annoyance that the Devil Council has a hand in this. The Devil Council is also trying to push the marriage forward. Your brother has been stalling them, but as you already know, his hand is basically tied at this point. Another hour passes and we continue to talk all the way up to dinner time. When father and I reach the dining hall, I see my mother and Rias are already there. With Rias sitting on the right with an empty chair between them. Thanks for watching. If you like it, then please like, share and subscribe.